Please swear in the witness.
Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Good morning, sir. Will you please state and spell your name for the record?
My name is Christopher Breen. Breen is spelled B-R-E-E-N.
What is your current place of residence?
Sonoma, California.
And were you previously employed by the San Francisco Police Department?
I was.
We'll get into your history with the department in a moment, but could you tell us what your educational background is?
I have 3 years of college at San Francisco State and College Marin, along with numerous other advanced study within police work.
All right. Let's talk about your time with the police department. When did you enter the academy and join the force?
I came into police academy December 3rd, 1984, and I left the department in January 15th, 2015.
Okay. And can you, to the best of your recollection, can you kind of walk us through what your assignments were, with the department during that time?
Sure. After I graduated from the police academy, I was assigned to Ingleside Station for approximately 6 weeks for field training, and then I was transferred to Central Station for the same amount of time to finish up my field training. Upon successful completion of field training, I was assigned a mission for 2 years, and then I was transferred to Northern Station for probably 14 more years. I then went to the K-9 unit for 2 years, went back to Northern Station. I went to Treasure Island, who at that point was considered part of Southern Station, for 4 years. And then I was promoted to sergeant. I went back to Northern Station for 14 months, and then I finished up my career as a sergeant out at Richmond Station.
Okay, thank you. Let me ask you then about the San Francisco Police Officers Association, which I will probably refer to as the POA from here on out. Did you ever have any involvement with the POA?
I did.
Okay, can you tell me about that?
Sure. Initially, I was a representative from Southern Police Station, and I did that for about 2 years. And then I was elevated by Gary Delanis, who was the past president of the POA, to the Sergeant at Arms. And I held that position for approximately, I believe, 8 to 10 years. And then I lost in my election bid, and I went to be the representative at Southern Station once again.
Okay. And you said that you were...
I take that back. I went, at that point, I was a representative from Richmond Station.
Okay. All right, you said that you were appointed to the Sergeant at Arms position by former POA President Delanis. Were you in fact re-elected to that position?
Twice.
Okay. And then you mentioned that you lost a further re-election bid?
True.
All right. During your time as Sergeant at Arms, do you recall a time when you, Mr. Delanis, and current POA President Marty Halloran were in Cambridge, Massachusetts in approximately April of 2010?
I do.
Okay. What was the purpose of that trip?
The purpose of that trip was to have all the major union leaders throughout the country go on a conference at Harvard University. You have numerous guest speakers. You're able to converse with other labor leaders and talk about the pros and cons of your respective unions. We talk about ways in which you can enhance a variety of different benefits for your own members.
Now, was that conference focused on particularly law enforcement associations, or was it more broad than that?
It was not broader than that. It was only law enforcement, and it was only the major police departments represented from the entire country.
Okay. Now, at that time, who was the chief of police in San Francisco?
Is George Gascon.
Okay. So George Gascon, who's currently the district attorney here?
That's correct.
Okay. Do you recall if then Chief Gascon was present or participated in that particular conference?
He did participate.
Okay. Can you tell me about what his role was?
Sure. Then Chief Gascon was asked by the facilitator of that conference to be a guest speaker. And I can't tell you what the subject that he spoke on, but I know he did speak, and he spent approximately 3 days back in Boston.
Do you recall a dinner where then Chief Gascon, you, Gary Delanis, and Marty Halloran were present in Cambridge, Massachusetts during that time?
I do.
Okay. Can you tell me about the purpose of the dinner?
Well, the purpose of the dinner was to have a good working relationship between the POA and the chief of police. And throughout that dinner, we were able to exchange just different ideas and way we can solidify the relationship.
Okay. Was there alcohol consumed during that dinner?
There was.
Okay. Do you recall then Chief Gascon consuming a significant amount of alcohol?
I do. And it was red wine that he consumed an awful lot of. He seemed to have a penchant for red wine, and I think that's all that he did drink.
Do you recall him getting somewhat intoxicated during that dinner?
I would define his state as intoxicated, sure. I mean, it was just based on his voice and based on the number of bottles that were consumed.
Do you recall anything sort of odd or particular about his, conduct during that dinner?
I do. I do. He was very boisterous. The more he drank, the louder he spoke, and also the context of what he spoke became very inflammatory, and he was loud. He was just very loud, and he was saying certain things that I absolutely couldn't believe that a chief of police was saying.
Please elaborate.
Okay. Chief Gascon was talking about his time when he was a deputy chief of police in LAPD. He talked about some of the various units that he headed up. And one of the units he talked about involved several black officers. And he would refer to these black officers as those people. And it was in a negative context in which he was talking about the black officers.
Have you heard that phrase used before in a context that well, let me ask you this. In using that terminology to describe black officers, did you have any thoughts as to what he meant or what his feelings were about those officers?
So it was very clear. The feelings were negative regarding those black officers.
And do you believe by referring to those people, he was referring to the fact that they were African American officers?
Clearly. There was no question about that at all.
Anything else jump out at you? Let me ask you, why do you have such a particular recollection of that?
My recollection is for two reasons. Number one, the chief of police referring to black people in that context was so inappropriate and so unexpected that it just made my jaw drop. It was so strange. But probably the part that was just more earth-shattering was the fact that there were some black people sitting right next to us. It was a husband and wife, and I believe they had 2 children. And they continued to look over at us, at our table. The more Chief Gascon spoke and the louder he spoke about what he referred to as those people. And I could see out of the corner of my eye that the husband and wife were becoming clearly irritated with the tone of his voice and also the context of what he was talking about. And I felt there was going to be a situation. There was going to be an embarrassing incident. But because the chief of police was talking, it certainly was not in my purview to correct him based on what he was saying. What happened after about 15 minutes, the husband got up at the adjoining table and he came over and he says, "Can you keep it down? What you're saying is offensive." And at that point, the chief realized that he had overstepped his bounds. And he said, "Okay, okay." And both the tone of his voice from that point and the context of what he was saying changed. He became more, should I say, chief-like,
Okay.
more professional.
How did you feel about his behavior?
It was embarrassing. It was embarrassing. And I never identified Chief Gascon to the people as the chief of police for San Francisco. I never did that. But clearly it was embarrassing. And it was uncomfortable. And like I said, he's the chief of police, so I didn't know how to handle it. Especially he was new, and he certainly didn't want to be corrected by a subordinate. So I let it go, but I was uncomfortable.
Were you personally offended by it?
I was extremely offended by it. An officer in the San Francisco Police Department, especially the chief of police, should never refer to any ethnic group in a derogatory way. And when you refer to black people as those people, that's offensive, it's derogatory, and it has no place.
Anything else about that dinner stick with you other than those events which clearly stand out in your mind?
No, that's the only part that really stuck out, and I've been trying to rack my brain to think what else was talked about throughout that evening, but nothing comes to mind other than the behavior, the tone, and the amount of alcohol that was consumed.
Fair to say that that sort of overshadowed everything else?
Oh, clearly. Yeah, there was nothing of value that was talked about after the patron came over and basically reprimanded Chief Gascon for what he was talking about.
Okay, thank you very much.